Okay, welcome to our Chardin white mug copy section video. We have a handout today, and we've got the white mug from Chardin. So we painted a white mug ourselves, and I'm purposely going back and forth between a copy of a painting and a painting in real life. And the idea is that we're trying to relate a technique, style, handling of paint that an artist uses, a master artist uses, and we're trying to relate that to our own work. So that's why we're going back and forth. And it's also, good variety of types of practice. So since we have a rectangle already given to us, we are going to measure this rectangle. In this case, it is 4.5 inches by 6 inches, and we are going to transfer this rectangle onto this piece of paper. Okay, this is a critical skill that I am expecting you to be able to do pretty easily, but we're still working on it in some cases. Okay, my paper is 6 by 9 because it's a piece of 9 by 12 inch art paper that has been cut in half. So we are going to find the halfway mark, in this case 3, and I'm going to mark that 3 times so that I can see it all the way across the paper when I get ready to make my cross section. And yeah, then I'm going to measure the other way. So that's going to be 4.5, because 9 divided by 2 is going to be 4.5. And so here is my center part right here. Okay, so that's the center of the paper, and I'm going to use these marks that I made of the half vertical to make a mark going all the way down the half. And then off of this, I'm going to measure my 4.5, which is going to be 2.25. No. Okay, so I want to be at 2.25 in the middle, but I want to do 0 and 4.5. Okay. And this is the width that I need. This is not difficult, but it's important because it's also part of how we're presenting our work. So if we were going to frame this, it would be helpful to have a margin that's equal all the way around. If we were going to hang it on the wall, which is more likely, we have created, if we centered this properly, we have created a margin that's even all the way around, and it's a way of presenting our work nicely, which is half the battle. Because you can have a really nice painting that is presented poorly, and it takes an expert to see how good it is. You can have a bad painting presented professionally, and people will ooh and ah over it regardless of what the actual quality is. Okay, now I forgot my dimension. We got 6 inches. Okay, so I'm gonna put this, I've gotta find the halfway mark. Okay, so basically I'm making a line in the middle of the paper going in both directions, and then I'm measuring off of that line the center dimension that gives me the outside edges of my rectangle. Okay, so I've got 6, so I'm going to put the center mark at 3, and I'm going to mark it here, and I'm going to mark it here. Okay, and then I'm gonna line these up because this is a short side. I don't feel like I need 3 marks. I think 2 is enough. Okay, so now I have the 4.5 by 6 inch dimension that I'm gonna paint on. Okay, so I'm doing that just for ease of use before I tape it down, and then I'm gonna stretch my paper. And I'm gonna stick my masking tape to my clothes. That's going to help it be less sticky. I'm going to go all the way along here on the edge. Okay, and if I want to make things easy on myself, I can just tape the edges of this rectangle. And that way I can paint right over it, and once I take the tape off, I will have a nice crisp edge. And my dimension will be right, so when I measure it, I can give you points. But centering the rectangle tells me that you understand measurements in relationship to planes. It shows me that you know how to use a ruler. It shows me that you know how to divide a dimension. All of these things are critical skills to the artist, so we're practicing them every week. All right, I'm finished with my pencil. No, I'm not finished with my pencil because I'm going to draw this mug. So I'm, have made this easy as I always do. We've got a 1-to-1 size ratio, and I'm gonna think about where are the points and where are they in relationship to this frame that I've made. And I've got an ellipse here, which is a circle turned on its side. And if I line this up, here, I'm gonna fold this actually so I can get these two rectangles a little bit closer together, but if I go across, I can tell exactly where this little bump is, this ridge along the edge of here. And there's a knife in this painting. I think I have it too far over. Okay. I'm gonna think about this distance so I have a point to hit. Always measuring things against other things. Let's see, am I happy with where that is? I think it's a little lower. So you can learn from me here. The less energy you have, the more mistakes you make as you draw. So, okay, there's this sort of bridge here. This is a pretty fancy mug, actually, which is maybe why Chardin chose it. And then here's my dark area, and I can start to think about value. We're gonna start, as always, with our 3 basic values and then move into something more complex. And now we know how to glaze. Okay, there's the cast shadow. And I can show myself where the form shadow is. Okay, I've got this. There's a little bit of a shadow here from this apple. There's an apple over here that's casting a little bit of a shadow, and then this looks like it's from the knife, and then I've got a knife here going across, and I can think about matching these angles. And I want to think about where does this part of the knife that starts the blade intersect with this area. So I'm always measuring against what I already have. Something new that I'm making. Double checking my measurements from before. Okay, and then we've got part of the table here. Intersects with the top of the knife, so okay, I'm relatively happy with this. Okay, and I'll still be drawing when I'm painting, but it's good to have boundaries. Okay. Okay, so instead of drawing after my drawing, you're drawing by looking at the image of Chardin, and yours will probably be better than mine. Okay, I'm gonna put my palette together here. I've got some white here that's running out a little bit. I'm gonna do 2 whites, so I always have a clean one, and 1 black. And I'm gonna give myself some painting medium. So if you're running out, make sure you bring your container back to class so that I can give you some more. Okay, we're gonna make a mid-tone because I do have like a black dark in here, so I can simplify this to having black, white, and a mid-tone gray. Then I'm mixing with my palette knife to keep my brushes clean, to make sure that the paint is well mixed and that I have enough of it. I'm gonna lighten this a little bit. I'm not sure this mid-tone is quite useful as is. Okay, so I'm gonna start out with these 3 values and then we'll move past there. Okay. So I want to get this covered as quickly as possible. I'm going to count this as a mid-tone because I want my darks to be here on the knife and in the shadows. So I can start back here. And this isn't quite dark enough, but I can change it later. I just want to get a basic value structure in here. Okay, I can refine these bumps when I push back out with the white, which is exactly what Chardin did, you can tell. Maybe this could be counted as black. gonna switch to white. My gray's still a little bit wet, so it's gonna mix a little bit, but that's fine. Okay, I have gray on my brush. And as I'm painting this, I see all kinds of subtle values that I'm going to be able to include in here once I get to more values. Okay. Got a little bit of black there. I'm going to count this as the darkest dark right here. That's a little too far over. Okay. I got a couple of white spots that I missed. Or medium gray. Let's see. What do I want this to be? I'm going to make this white. I'm going to shift it up. Okay, I've got white right here as a highlight. Right here. And I'm going to count this part of the table. Okay. So relatively quickly, I've got some value in here. I'm not crazy about the way this brush is frayed. All right, the next step is going to be to get some more values in here. So I'm going to take my mid-tone. I kind of made a mess with the white over here, so I'm going to move it over. Okay. So I want to make 2 steps lighter and 2 steps darker. This gives us a manageable amount of value. But with glazing and mixing a little bit with our brush and layering and wet paint mixing into wet paint, we can get a lot out of this 7 values, because it can turn into any number. All right, I think I put too much gray in here. So I want this one to be very close to white. I'm looking at these values here and they're very light. Okay. This one maybe should be a little lighter. Some of this in. And when you're painting and you're ready to paint, you kind of feel like, I don't want to mix paint, but it helps you as you're painting to have more freedom, more control, and more time spent actually painting once you get this set up. So I recommend, I insist that you mix your values before you really start into this next part of the painting. I don't have very much medium gray, so I'm gonna kind of remix it here. And I don't have to copy this color, I just have to make it one step darker. This might be too much black. Okay, I'm gonna shift this one down just a little bit. Okay, I've got 7 values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hopefully you can see all this. If not, it's okay. So now I'm gonna decide where to start. And I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna try to match these values a little bit. Let's see if this is right for some of these areas. And I have a little bit of glob of black here, so it's mixing with my paint that I have on my brush, which is fine. Not worried. And the thing that's helpful about looking at Chardin, he has a very painterly style. He's a French painter who's influenced by Netherlandish still life painting. And he's notable, I don't know, just kind of for the way he handles the paint, but he's got this very particular quality in the way that he paints. The objects start to feel like familiar objects to us, even though, you know, we've never seen them in real life before. These are not our mugs or our apples, but it's very kind of colloquial handling of the paint that he does. Very unassuming. And yet there's a seriousness to it. So as we imitate his marks, we internalize something of his vision, and we learn from him and the way that he handles the paint, and it's gonna help inform us when we're making our own marks, observing from our own objects. So follow these bumps a little bit. This is part of what makes this interesting. This would be, at this time, a handmade mug. And if I didn't already say this, it's remarkably modern. Somebody decided that all these bumps would be more interesting than just having a completely smooth vessel, which is kind of fascinating. That something so old can seem so modern. Okay, I'm gonna dip into my glaze a little bit here because I don't want to entirely redraw everything I've got. I'm gonna utilize my underpainting. And I want to get some of this softness about the way these things are painted. Okay, so these are very subtle values that are shifting this bead around. I'm looking at the edges, the transitions between values. Is it a soft transition? Is it a hard transition? So we can see the difference between this gradient and then this area where two planes come together, making a pretty hard edge. It's a painted edge, so. It's not as hard as it could be. Okay. So I've started to approach this. And his latest parts are right here. There's clearly a highlight on this glazed mug. Highly reflective, and that's what he saves his whitest whites for. Of course, Chardin is painting in color. We're painting in black and white, but I thought this would be a good way to introduce you to a famous still life artist and paint another white mug. Okay, I'm gonna have to tackle, some of these darker areas. So I need to figure out what I'm doing here in this transition area. I'm gonna just shift this a little bit. I'm glazing here. And I can think a little bit as I'm doing this about where Chardin laid in his values, like which ones are on top of other ones, because that might help me get a similar effect. Got some reflected light right here. So this ridge along here is created by a value shift. Okay, getting closer. I'm gonna make this a little bit darker because that contrast is more extreme. This is my second to last dark. Kind of lightens up over here, and this is truly, I think, a lot to do with just Chardin's paintbrush and what was on his brush as he was making these marks, as much as any kind of like, you know, emanating light or something like that. I mean, it creates that effect, but I think it's mostly that he was painting two colors at once here. But we'll see if we can do the same thing. I'm gonna use this light paintbrush, so this is helping me because I need this to be a lighter value anyway. Maybe not that light. Dark, which seems to extend all the way over here. Okay, I'm gonna glaze to make this transition. So this is something that we've observed a lot because we're painting white things that are round. So this transition where the light's coming in this direction and we've got shadow inside of the ellipse, but then eventually light hits really hard out here on the farther side. We've painted that a lot in a lot of situations, so dealing with that kind of transition is worth thinking about here because we're learning from another artist. How did he handle it? And we've got some brush strokes kind of moving back and forth in order to create that effect. Okay, I'm gonna try to make this got a pretty dark in here. The shape of the brush matters a little bit here. Trying to get that kind of line that he's got. It's almost like bleeding into what's underneath. We're just gonna do our best to get that one. This is a highlight, that extra mark. Also, Chardin is painting in oil and we're painting in acrylic, so there's a little bit of a difference here in terms of what we can do, but not much. We can still learn a lot here and get really close. Okay, I'm gonna put this highlight stroke in there. Okay, and then look again down here at this transition. So it's pretty dark along here. This is really dark. You need this contrast to create depth and interest. And this is a pretty solid shadow here. A little bit of a line where it seems like a table meets a wall. Okay, let's look again at the highlights on this. And then I think we're done with the mug for now. Okay, and this knife is pretty simple. If we abstract it into a series of shapes and lines that are just adjacent to each other, comparing value. Okay, so after passing over this, I'm gonna dip into glaze here to get the effect of that he's got of something laid over something else. Well, yeah. I'm also gonna glaze with white on top. But if I'm just persistent and I keep making strokes and keep observing, I can eventually get everything in here that Chardin has. This I think is up a little higher. I'll come in here with the medium gray. Okay, I'm gonna look at this once more. You can see the brush strokes in there, which is pretty interesting. I need to go one darker, I think, than the medium gray that I already have painted on here. And there's a little bit of cast shadow in there. Maybe a tiny bit lighter. Okay. Does this look like his mug? What am I missing? I'm gonna dull that just a little bit with a tiny bit of glaze. I'll go with my second gray. I just don't want this to be quite as bright here. Okay, and you see how I can just like subtly shift that down a value. And I haven't redrawn anything. I just changed the intensity of that highlight on there. And yeah, this looks pretty good. I'm gonna make this a little bit darker right here. And when I pull this tape off, it'll be nice and even. I think I have a highlight here that I don't want. I don't think it's the light in my room. Strokes here are a little bit less circular. Okay, I see a little bit lightness right there. Right there. I already have it there. All right, I'm gonna stop here and I can't wait to see your mug.